most of the history that people have been looking at fibers, they've been using microscopy, and the ability to identify and distinguish fibers by microscopy is very much dependent on the skill of the operator. Inevitably, when you get tricky situations with certain types of fibers and certain blends of fibers, microscopists will disagree. And so a supplier may come and say that his product is 100% cashmere, and when the customer, perhaps the retailer, tests it himself, that microscopist says it's something different. This is a problem for the industry, obviously. With an objective test method, it's absolutely black and white. The result is a readout from a machine. And this is something that the industry has needed for a long time, especially because there are unscrupulous traders who will substitute less expensive fibers for cashmere and try to hoodwink the consumer and the retail or manufacturing customer. Obviously, there's a financial incentive to do it because cashmere is so expensive. It hurts the image of the product, which is CCMI's business to protect. Ultimately, it harms the consumer who gets a product that doesn't perform as a cashmere product should perform. So for a variety of reasons, these new technologies are very important to our mission. Well, that's precisely the point. We're finding that the results are the same from one laboratory to another. This is what we've been trying to achieve. Take the guesswork out of it. Laboratories should be scientific and they ought to agree. Regrettably, with microscopy, they did not always agree. Frequently, the good ones, normally they would agree, but there was always a problem case, and it often arose from fibers that had been perhaps treated deliberately in order to deceive the microscopist, or from quite difficult fibers. Certain sheep's wool and certain yak is hard to distinguish from particular types of cashmere. The test methods are all outlined by various standards organizations such as the American Association of Textile Chemists and Colorists or the International Standards Organization. I think what you are asking, however, is what is the physical description which qualifies a fiber as cashmere, and that it's the fiber of the cashmere goat to start with, so that's a genetic definition, cashmere goat. Beyond that, we look for certain physical parameters, and they are under 19 microns in denier, less than 24% coefficient of variation, under 3% guard hair. Guard hair is also cashmere, but guard hair is coarse hair. You don't want a cashmere product that contains more than that amount of guard hair, or it prickles. Yeah, you could do that. Frankly, our members don't feel that a cashmere mark is necessary because their brands are so well established and so synonymous with integrity and quality that no further certification is needed or wanted. Well, that's what we do. That's our mission, is to bring them to heel. And we bring them to heel by policing the retail market and testing goods. And then we put the job back on the retailer to get those goods off his shelf and take appropriate measures against the suppliers. Ultimately, over time, the suppliers have become more careful. The market has become more honest. We won't ever eliminate mislabeling totally just because of that economic differential that I mentioned with the price of cashmere raw material. But the market has begun to realize that the consequences of mislabeling are out there, and it's not worth it to a retailer to harm his reputation. Blend with cashmere and silk, there's nothing wrong with that. You can't call cashmere anything other than cashmere, and you can't, well, actually, that's not exactly true. Wool is a generic term for animal fibers, also a specific term for sheep's wool. Yes. Cashmere generically is a wool. Now, if anybody's got genuine cashmere, they're not going to call it wool because the value is in the cashmere name. Mm-hmm. So if you've got a cashmere and silk product, you can call that cashmere and silk. If you have a cashmere and wool blend, which is a legitimate blend and a legitimate product, you'd call it cashmere and wool. And under the laws of most of the countries, you have to give the specific percentages of each of the constituent fibers. I agree that that there's more awareness of sustainability and more demand for that. Cashmere is a small industry. It's primarily the raw material is raised by nomads on the fringes of the Gobi Desert and the steppes of Central Asia. It's in all likelihood meets many of the qualifications of sustainability, but we are not in a position to make the kind of certification for the product that would be required simply because of the complicated and in some cases rather primitive supply chain. I can't tell you if that nomad out there has some baling twine or something that doesn't conform for one reason or another. But certainly the industry is looking at that issue and looking at it both from the standpoint of the raw material and the processing. Well, I think it's useful. I think any kind of get-together where information is exchanged on the industry and people are given an opportunity to meet is useful. And here in Hong Kong or in China is clearly where much of this has to take place.